Jesus is the reason for the season. Keep Christ in Christmas. Don't play Christmas music until December 1st. I used to support statements like this 100%. But once I found out the true meaning of Christmas and all its traditions, I was never the same. So before I get into the background of the holiday and each tradition, let's just look at this from a general standpoint. What are the inevitables of Christmas? Christmas music, Christmas decorations, and commercialism, just to name a few. Christmas music. What are the songs usually about that you hear on the radio or in stores and malls? Not God, not baby Jesus. You might hear an occasional Oh Holy Night or Silent Night, but you're way more likely to hear songs like Jingle Bells, Jingle Bell Rock, White Christmas, Last Christmas, The Christmas Song, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, All I Want for Christmas Is You, Feliz Navidad, Santa Baby, It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, Baby It's Cold Outside, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, stuff like that. Christmas decorations. Again, you might see an occasional nativity scene, but you're way more likely to see Santa Claus, reindeer, the Grinch, elves, snowflakes, gnomes, gingerbread houses, snowmen, nutcrackers, giant gifts and ornaments, ribbons, and of course, Christmas trees, garlands, and lights. Commercialism. There's nothing wrong with giving to other people. A lot of people get in the giving spirit around Christmas time, but it's driven by mass advertising and sales 2 or even 3 months in advance. Stores make a killing around Christmas time. Are we buying things for people out of obligation? Because we just have to follow the Christmas tradition? Because we just can't pass up that good price at the store? Or because we genuinely want the recipient to have what we bought? There is some dark history behind gift giving, just like many of the other traditions. We'll get into all of that. But we can see, even from a general viewpoint of 3 pillars of this holiday, that any concept of Jesus really isn't there. So why are so many seemingly non-Christians celebrating a supposedly Christian holiday? Let's look at the facts. What are the different Christmas traditions and trademarks, and what do they really represent? December 25th. Jesus was not born on December 25th. The story of Jesus' birth in Luke 2 says that there were shepherds in the fields keeping watch over their flocks by night when the angel came to them announcing Jesus' birth. They wouldn't have their flocks outside in December, one of the coldest months of the year in Judea. Luke 2 also tells us that Jesus' parents were traveling to Bethlehem for the Roman census. It would not make sense to hold a census in December because, remember, people did not have cars back then. They traveled mostly by walking or by donkey, so it would have been very difficult to travel in such weather. All things considered, there is simply no evidence pointing to what day Jesus was born. There are speculations and educated guesses, but no one knows for sure. So why is Christmas celebrated on December 25th? Pagan tradition and syncretism. The ancient Romans had a week-long celebration called Saturnalia, which lasted from December 17th to 25th, coinciding with the winter solstice. And as you can probably deduce from its name, this ancient Roman holiday honors Saturn, the god of seed sowing, and it celebrates the promise of a spring harvest. The festival was full of drunkenness, gambling, sex, feasting, and gift exchange. How does Jesus' birth fit into that? After Constantine converted to Catholicism, many pagans followed him once they were allowed to maintain their celebration of Saturnalia. They solved the problem of Saturnalia having nothing to do with Christianity by declaring December 25th, the birth of Sol Invictus, the invincible sun, S-U-N, to be Jesus' birthday, God's Son, S-O-N. See how convenient that is? They replaced and Christianized the celebration, but little changed in practice. There is no evidence of Christmas being celebrated in the first 3 centuries A.D. The 5th century A.D. is when Rome officially made Christmas a Christian holiday. This time of year also coincides with the pagan festival Yule, December 20th to 23rd, celebrated by the ancient Germanic peoples to commemorate the rebirth of the sun. And just like Saturnalia, Yule was Christianized when the Germanic peoples underwent Christianization. The Christmas tree. Trees hold a critical role in Germanic paganism and mythology. Individual trees are regarded as sacred trees, and groups of trees are regarded as sacred groves. Yggdrasil, also known as Irminsul, a big evergreen tree, is considered sacred and central to the cosmos. Christmas trees are evergreen, right? Norsemen believed that this tree connected humans with their gods. Rome, same thing. The ancient Romans decorated their temples with evergreens during the Saturnalia festival. Pagans in Europe used branches of evergreen fir trees to decorate their homes and brighten their spirits during the winter solstice. And ancient Egyptians used green palm rushes as part of their worship of the god Ra. There is even speculation that the Bible prophesies and warns about our idea of Christmas trees today. Jeremiah 10 verses 2 through 5. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be borne, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. That sounds like a Christmas tree, doesn't it? This verse makes it clear that using trees in this manner is idolatry. Mistletoe. The ancient Druids believed it had mystical powers to ward off evil spirits and bring good luck. In ancient Norse mythology, mistletoe was used to symbolize love and friendship. It is also associated with the death of the Norse god Baldur, who was stabbed fatally by mistletoe. As a way to honor Baldur, the gods vowed that going forward, mistletoe would only be used for usefulness, happiness, and love. Thus we get the custom of kissing under mistletoe. Santa Claus. His story goes all the way back to the bishop Saint Nicholas, who died in AD 345 and was made a saint in the 1800s. It is said that a few centuries later, a group of sailors who idolized him moved his bones from Turkey to Italy, where he supplanted a favor-granting deity called the Grandmother, who used to fill children's stockings with gifts. In Saint Nick's honor, his followers would give each other gifts on the anniversary of his death, December 6th. This cult spread to Germanic and Celtic pagan circles. Many of them worshipped Woden, more commonly known as Odin, who had a long white beard and rode a horse through the heavens each fall. Sounds familiar, right? So through the process of syncretism, Nicholas and Odin were combined. Later syncretism moved the giving of gifts to December 25th instead of December 6th. In 1809, novelist Washington Irving satirically wrote about St. Nicholas using his Dutch name, Santa Claus. 13 years later, Clement Clarke Moore wrote a poem based on this Santa Claus, A Visit from St. Nicholas. The poem incorporated the giving of gifts, added his descent down the chimney, and replaced the horse with a sleigh and 8 reindeer. Our modern image of Santa Claus was provided by a 19th century Bavarian cartoonist, Thomas Nast, who gave him a home at the North Pole and a workshop with elves who made toys. The creation of Santa was completed in 1931 when the Coca-Cola Corporation developed a marketing campaign for a Coke drinking Santa. Swedish commercial artist Hadon Sundblom made Santa chubby and gave him a bright Coca-Cola red outfit. Author Lawrence Kellerman states that the modern Santa was born, a blend of Christian crusader, pagan god, and commercial idol. Another thing to point out. In the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, the description of the way Santa exits the house is an eye raiser for sure. And laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. If that's not magic, I don't know what is. And there's nothing godly about magic. Last thing worth mentioning. If you take Santa's name and move the N to the end, what do you get? Satan. Santa is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, just like Jesus. It's always been Satan's desire to dethrone Jesus and bring worship to himself, and he disguises himself as someone friendly, in this case a fat man with a white beard who rides a sleigh and says, ho ho ho. Wreaths. Wreaths were originally made for use in pagan rituals in Europe and were associated with the changing seasons and fertility. Wreaths were made to be headwear designed with leaves, flowers, and branches, and were typically worn on festive occasions and on holy days. Various figures from Roman and Greek mythology are depicted wearing wreaths, as well as Roman and Greek rulers and heroes. As you can probably guess, wreaths were syncretized too, and the Virgin Mary and other saints are depicted crowned with wreaths. The practice of hanging wreaths on the door comes from the ancient Greeks, who did so for protection against plagues and misfortune. Christmas lights. Whether it be lights on the tree, lights on the house, Yule logs in the fireplace, or candles in the windows, the basic idea of lights goes back to the Yule festival. The Germanic peoples would light sacred fires as an act of sympathetic magic to ensure the health and vigor of the newly reborn sun. Basically, they were afraid of the dark and the evil spirits they believed inhabited it. They did not want to be at the spirit's mercy if the sun should die. But if light could scare away evil spirits, then Satan and his demons would never come near their neighborhood. Nowadays, the devil doesn't fear these lights, but uses them to misguide mankind. Giving gifts. As I mentioned earlier, the practice of giving gifts derives from the pagan Saturnalia festival. What were some of the gifts commonly given in Saturnalia? Gold rings. When we sing the 12 days of Christmas, that's the loudest part of the song, right? 5 golden rings. Pagan tradition. Wax candles and oil lamps were also popular Saturnalia gifts. During the dark days around the solstice, candles were reminders of the return of the sun after winter. In Roman homes, wax candles were placed as offerings on household altars to Saturn, especially during the final days of the festival. This was practical too. Lots of lamps were needed to light the nighttime celebrations. This is where we get the Christmas candle tradition from. One more note to add while we're on the topic of gifts. Suppose it's the birthday of someone you love. You want to honor that person on their special day, right? And buy a nice gift for them. If that's the case, why do we, on the day we claim to be Jesus' birthday, buy gifts for everyone else but the birthday celebrant? Food for thought. Reindeer. The idea of Santa having reindeer evolved from the Celtic horn god Cernunnos, who has antlers like a deer. The Babylonian god Baal also has horns. 8 reindeer pull Santa's sleigh, representative of the 8 solar sabbats, or festivals. 8 is also symbolic of the 8 legs of Odin's horse that he flew on throughout the sky. Ceremonies using reindeer antlers were often performed at Yuletide, and it's also worth mentioning that one of the 8 reindeer, Cupid, is named after a Roman god. Christmas in July. Various Christmas movies are played in July. Some people have Christmas in July parties, some nightclubs have Christmas in July events, stores may have Christmas in July sales. But where did this trend come from? And why is it not in June, which would be halfway throughout the year? The choice of July is intentional. As I mentioned earlier, before there was Christmas, there was Yule, a holiday and festival practiced by pagans in ancient Germanic circles. And get this, another name for Yule is Jul, the Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish spelling, one letter off from the word July. Here are a few more quick ones. The colors of Yule are red, green, white, gold, and silver, all colors we see around Christmas time. Perhaps this is also why we see poinsettias at Christmas. They hit 2 of those colors, red and green. Bells were often rung during the winter solstice to drive away demons that surface during the darkest moments of the year. They were rung in the morning to chase away the dark days and welcome the warmer, brighter days following the solstice. Hence all the Christmas songs about bells. Jingle bells, jingle bell rock, carol of the bells, I heard the bells on Christmas Day, silver bells, and more. Elves first became associated with Yule because the ancients believed that the spirits that created the sun inhabited the land of elves. By including elves in the Yule celebrations, the ancients believed they were assuring the elves' assistance in the coercion of the sun to return. Caroling was also a popular Yule tradition, when young children honored the winter solstice with song. They went through the villages singing door to door. The villagers in return would reward them with tokens and sweets and small gifts which symbolized the food and prosperity given by the mother goddess to all her earthly children. Gingerbread men come from Saturnalia, the Roman winter solstice celebration. As I said, the festivities included excessive drinking, eating, and carousing. Celebrants ate man-shaped biscuits representing the culminating event of Saturnalia, human sacrifice as a gift to appease the gods. If you eat ham on Christmas, that tradition comes from Yule. Pigs and wild boar were sacrificed to the Norse god Freyr to grant a bountiful harvest or to bless marriages and children. After the sacrifices were made, the meat was boiled and eaten at the Yule feast. Leaving cookies out for Santa dates back to ancient Norse mythology with Odin and his 8-legged horse. During the Yule season, children believed that Odin traveled the world and left gifts for them as long as they left something for him, usually cookies or small cakes. Not sure how fruitcake became associated with Christmas, but it comes from pagan tradition as well. In ancient Egypt, fruitcakes were buried with the dead as a sort of power bar for the afterlife. The Greeks later adopted this custom and said that the gods ate it, just as the dead were supposed to eat them in Egypt. The Druids later used it as part of their fertility cults, giving it to brides to ensure that the fertility goddess impregnated them. 12 Days of Christmas comes from the Yule log. The Celts believed the sun stood still during the winter solstice. They thought keeping the Yule log burning for these 12 days would encourage the sun to move, making the days longer. And Christmas ornaments come from what is known as the Yule tree. In ancient times, the Yule tree was decorated with various things: gifts people wanted to receive from the gods, natural ornaments such as pine cones, berries, and other fruit, and also symbols sacred to the gods and goddess. So is Jesus really the reason for the season? Christianity continues to make this argument year after year, but frankly, it's a losing battle. So why do Christians celebrate Christmas? It must be a combination of pure obliviousness, people who genuinely don't know the history of Christmas, and pure hypocrisy, people behind the scenes who know the truth but continue to put on the facade. Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle. You know there is some pagan history behind Christmas, but the nostalgia of celebrating it makes it hard to let go. But regardless, don't try to keep Christ in Christmas because he was never in it to begin with. There is nothing wrong with celebrating Jesus' birth, but don't feel obligated to celebrate it on December 25th. And don't just celebrate his birth, celebrate the whole story: his death, his resurrection, and his soon return. Don't follow the traditions of men, follow the doctrines of God.